Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled The Gorge. Let's get straight into the storyline. The film opens with a woman named Dresa, a trained sniper with an extraordinary talent. She survives 7 days and nights just to complete a mission, shoot a man exiting a plane. As soon as the target appears, Dresa shoots the man dead. On the other hand, the film moves to the United States. There, we are introduced to a man named Levi, a former Special Forces officer and experienced sniper who can shoot from a long distance. Levi, who has been unemployed for a long time, then gets a message from a private military base offering him to become a mercenary. Because Levi needed money to pay rent and pay off debts at that time, he immediately accepted the offer. Arriving at the base, Levi was greeted by a woman named Mara. Mara was the head of a private company engaged in federal branch research and was still part of a military institution. Mara immediately reviewed Levi's background. He was listed as a former elite sniper with a record of killing hundreds of people without ever failing a mission. She was amazed by Levi's experience and was convinced that this job was a perfect fit for his skills as a former military veteran. However, one thing made Levi ask Mara, "What is the job I need to get done?" Levi was not told who the target would be, no name, location, or time of shooting. He was only asked to obey Mara's orders. The scene switches to Dresa, who is meeting with her father before leaving on a mission. Her father is a former soldier who fought in the Second World War. Back to Levi, he is now in a plane and then plunges from a great height, landing in a wilderness. From there, he had to walk 38 kilometers, cross rivers, and climb cliffs to reach his destination. Long story short, Levi arrived at the location, a tower standing on the edge of a long ravine shrouded in thick fog. Soon after, he met a soldier named Osir, who had been guarding the tower for over a year. Osir took Levi around and showed him the various facilities that had been set up. Levi's task was to replace Osir guarding the tower for the next year. Osir also emphasized that this job was top secret for the military. Their job is to monitor the misty ravine, which has been fitted with wire fences and automatic sensors to detect movement from below the cliff. The only partner in this task is the person in the opposite tower. Apparently, this work had been done for about 75 years, and the guards were changed every year. The curious Levi then asked, "Is there anything under the cliff?" But Osir only replied, "If something climbs above the surface, immediately shoot without hesitation and prevent the creature from climbing up." Even Osir himself did not know what exactly was down below, but he warned Levi to stay alert.
JD, what do you think's really going on here?
Gates long gamer telephone. Yeah.
Long story short, after saying goodbye, Osir was picked up by a helicopter to return to his hometown and join his friends. However, shortly after, he was shot dead to keep the place a secret.
Thank you for your service.
After a month in the tower, Levi got used to the routine, checking the satellites, patrolling the wire fences, checking the automatic weapon machines, and sending monthly reports to headquarters. In his busy schedule, Levi accidentally came across motivational notes left behind by the previous guards. One of them was a note from the first man on duty in 1947, which read, "All is dangerous medicine if we step up, unless we just shut up and accept reality."
Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go.
For the first time in a month, Levi saw his partner in the distance, Dresa, the beautiful sniper from the mercenary branch. This confirmed that the tower guards were well-trained troops who were good at shooting. The days passed. Before they knew it, they had been guarding the tower for more than 2 months. After stealing glances at each other several times, they finally began to interact using writing that could be seen through binoculars from a distance. Apart from getting acquainted, they also had time to show their shooting skills by testing the sniper abilities of fellow mercenaries. However, while having fun, Dresa suddenly saw something under the tower and hurriedly asked Levi to focus on looking down the ravine. Until rooted creatures started to climb up to the surface. Levi, who saw this, immediately opened fire. Likewise with Dresa, who provided assistance by firing machine guns at the figure. Right after successfully preventing the creatures from rising to the surface, the figure reappeared from the tower guarded by Dresa. In fact, the creatures even managed to get past the guardrail. Instantly, they began to activate the automatic sensors that made the machine guns active. The next morning, after finishing the battle, Levi began to repair all the damage, such as repairing the guardrails, automatic mines, and sensors that were previously damaged by the tree creatures. However, at that moment, a drone aircraft appeared flying from under the fog. The drone was probably sent by the military to monitor their condition. 6 months passed, precisely in December, on Christmas Eve. There, Levi took the initiative to build a Christmas tree complete with snowmen. Until that day, they started having fun by playing chess remotely. Moving on to February, Dresa, who had not returned home for a long time, remembered her father. That night, Dresa immediately expressed her loneliness and hoped that Levi would be by her side to listen to all her confessions. Without caring about the regulations of the headquarters, Levi planned to meet Dresa in person. In the morning, Levi searched for equipment and intended to make a rope launcher so he could cross to Dresa's tower. Out of his mind, Levi used a rocket that had been attached to a rope in order to cross quickly. After the rocket landed, Dresa began to tie the rope tightly. Without hesitation, Levi launched himself towards the opposite tower. For the first time after months of separation, they were finally able to meet in person.
I brought you flowers.
Of course he did.
Dresa took Levi out to eat and told him about their experiences as elite troops.
This gorge every day for the last 6 months, and I gotta say the view is much better over here.
The next morning, after meeting Dresa, Levi excused himself. He promised to meet her if she ever needed to talk to him again. However, on his way back to the tower, Levi fell into a ravine after his rope was cut by a horde of tree creatures that accidentally hit a minefield as they were returning to the surface. When Dresa saw this, she immediately prepared to take a parachute and dive down the ravine to save Levi. Eventually, she landed in a fast-flowing river. She accidentally dropped the automatic towing device that was supposed to be used to climb back up to the surface. After struggling through the rushing river, Dresa finally made it to shore and immediately searched for Levi, who was trapped in a tree root. The tree had mutated into a monstrous monster. When Levi was about to be eaten, it was fortunate that Dresa came to his rescue. After surviving, another rooted creature appeared and immediately attacked them both. Despite the difficulty, Levi finally managed to shoot and defeat the creature. After defeating the creatures, they traveled through the thick fog until they reached an abandoned city with cracks in the ground caused by an earthquake. Nobody knows what happened in this city, but they must return to the surface before being devoured by terrible creatures. At the same time, Levi saw an old church and decided to hide inside after hearing the growling sounds of the rooted creatures that would soon come. Inside the church, it was full of neatly arranged corpses. However, interestingly, each corpse was completely headless. Dresa thought that they had died from cyanide. But suddenly, a spider creature with a skull appeared. Dresa and Levi had to fight against the creature's attacks. Because the creatures kept appearing, Dresa took an explosive weapon to make a large hole in the church wall. Eventually, they managed to escape. Then, they arrived at a giant vault built underground.
Barricade.
When they got there, Levi realized that this place had once been a secret research laboratory built during the Second World War. In fact, they found a tape containing recordings of research conducted by scientists in the past. As the tape played, a scientist was heard explaining about a secret project being developed by former scientists. All the secrets about rootmen and monstrous creatures were revealed. It is known that in 1946, after the end of the Second World War, Britain, America, and the Soviet Union began working together to develop biological weapons, or rather, biochemical weapons that were no less deadly than nukes made in China, where they could create superpowered soldiers like Captain America. However, during the research process, a massive earthquake caused a leak in the biochemical weapon and triggered a genetic mutation. This caused human DNA to mix with plant DNA, creating terrible creatures.
Physically. Like this.
Predictably, the people in the church didn't really die. Instead, they have mutated into giant spiders. Apparently, all the creatures in this ravine were prepared to be used as soldiers if there was a big war on Earth one day.
I'm so sorry. May God have mercy on our souls.
Not far from the laboratory room, Levi found a room containing a computer. When the computer was turned on, they found something very surprising. As it turns out, Mara, who was introduced at the beginning of the movie, is the leader who founded all experiments on terrible creatures. It was revealed that Mara's company name was Dark Lake, a company engaged in genetic research and defense. It can be concluded that in the 2000s, Mara had sent her troops into the abyss. However, the troops instead underwent mutations and turned into ferocious figures. At the same time, Levi found a folder containing an emergency protocol. If all research is revealed to the public, the place will be blown up with a radius of approximately 4.2 kilometers. After learning this, Levi and Dresa continued their search to find a way out. However, in the middle of the search, they were trapped by a horse-shaped creature. Dresa was immediately dragged 500 meters to the creature's hiding place. Meanwhile, Levi, who managed to escape the trap, immediately caught up with Dresa, who was taken to a hole where the rooted creature hid. On the other hand, Dresa was now seen bound and hanging by the mutant creature, the first soldier to guard the tower. However, due to a biochemical exposure one day, he was transformed into a ferocious figure. As Dresa is about to be eaten by the creature, Levi shows up to save her.
You okay?
Long story short, they arrived at the nuclear plant room after continuing their journey. There, they saw a strange plant that seemed to be multiplying, just as the scientist had described in the tapes. However, out of curiosity, Dresa accidentally stepped on the plant's slime. The plant began to spread like the tentacles of a jellyfish. Finally, Dresa fired an explosive at the plant. They arrived at a warehouse that still held an old Jeep. Using a tow rope, they managed to start the car. Arriving at the point where Levi had fallen earlier, they hooked the cut rope and began to climb to the surface. However, once again, a horde of rooted creatures came after them. Levi and Dresa tried to fight the crowd of creatures. They managed to burn the creatures and finally reached the surface. Levi then rushed back to the tower and promised to meet Dresa after completing his mission. Arriving at the tower, he immediately gave military headquarters a monthly report on developments while guarding it. However, without realizing it, Mara already knew that Levi and Dresa had gone into the abyss and knew the research secrets of the company developing a dangerous super soldier project. As it turned out, the laptop they accessed in the ravine was connected to the headquarters. Because of this, Mara intended to execute Levi and Dresa to cover up her research. Levi and Dresa, who had anticipated this, began to devise a plan to destroy the abyss. They planted explosives in all the guard satellites. If all the satellites exploded, the security protocols would automatically trigger a massive explosion with a radius of 4.2 kilometers, which would destroy the entire abyss and the research evidence it contained. After finishing putting up the explosives, Mara and her troops arrived and immediately released several drones to track and kill Levi. After Levi and Dresa managed to defeat all the drones, they immediately took a position to fire bullets at the bomb trigger plate. As a result, Mara's explosives exploded with a radius of 4.2 kilometers. Mara, who realized this, immediately fled by helicopter. Levi and Dresa also ran as fast as possible to a safe location. However, due to the massive explosion, Mara, who was still in the explosion area, died crashing into a cliff. Likewise with Levi, who was either killed or survived, but was seen blown towards the ravine. The only survivor was Dresa, who immediately left the place. Long story short, the movie moves to a few months later, where we see that Dresa has now opened a restaurant and is focused on living a normal life. She stopped being a mercenary. After several months of waiting, Levi finally comes to see Dresa. They live happily without having to go back to being mercenaries. And the movie is over.